gut-brain hybrids. Look at that in more detail. And interestingly, Hippocrates had a glimpse. All disease begins in the gut. Now, I'm not saying all of it does, but over 2,000 years ago. This is a simple graphic of the gut-brain axis. We know our brain can control our gut. We're very anxious. We kind of feel it in our gut. If we have to clear ourselves, we direct. So we know this part of the axis, that we have some control over our abdomen or gut. It's this that we're learning about. It's how does what happens in the gut affect how I feel, how I think, etc., in diseases of my brain. You need to dive in. Brain health largely depends on the GI tract. Now, if the intestines house 70 to 80% of our immune system, if you're a country and you're going to devote 70 to 80% of your defenses in one area, you know you've got a problem in that area. So the body is doing that, okay? And we'll look at why. And so this is the nitty-gritty slide, if you will. We're going to expand on all of this, but for us to kind of delve into, okay? This is the inside of our intestine. This is the outside world. This is what we put in our mouths. It's all coming in from the outside. So what happens is very dependent on this. And I'll show you the connections in a minute. Some people call it the second brain, if you will. So what I want you to look at is these little villi where all the action happens. We're going to dive in and understand the battleground, so to speak. So we have microvilli in our gut, okay? We'll have 6,000 to 25,000 per square inch. If it was all laid out, it'd be 30 square meters. That's how much absorptive surface we all have, okay? And each microvillus has a nerve, it's the vagus, and it has an artery and a vein, okay? This is a healthy gut microvillus. What is in those crevices? Why is this surface even there? Because things are in the crevices. We put the food supply that goes down here, and we have trillions of bacteria in there. Okay? We cannot live without them. We need to nurture the right bacteria or we're going to get sick. And I'll give you some examples. So estimated over 100 trillion microorganisms, over 10,000 different species. As a neurologist that specializes in this area, Dr. Perlmutter says, put simply, they are in charge of your health. So the gut absorbs nutrients, detoxifies, builds some of our neurotransmitters,
Please stop.
builds vitamins. What doesn't show here.
So this is a very beautiful talk which I was seeing, neuroinflammation. So when we are working with neuro diseases, the most important thing is what? The gut-brain axis. Well, in past also I have spoken many times about the gut-brain axis, but then you are not able to understand the importance. I got many questions. How can gut be a second brain? How this is possible? This is not found in the papers. This is not found here. This is not found there. So it was better for me to teach you from the YouTube from a second lecturer. Having two opinions, we call it second opinion. So here you can see whatever you do, brain stimulation and all, will only work when the gut-brain axis is proper. Now, our gut has more than trillion of bacteria. गट और ब्रेन का एक बहुत बड़ा संबंध है. गट को, स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन्स को दूसरा ब्रेन कहा गया है. जैसे टीसीएम को हार्ट को ब्रेन कहा गया है, वैसे इन मॉडर्न न्यूरोसाइंस गट इज कॉल्ड एज द सेकंड केस. So we can understand from this viewpoint how important is the food to human being. In past also I said why we should avoid certain type of food which triggers what. Now if you see, the moment I work with autism child, CP child, I get good results. मुझे CP child, autism child सब में अच्छा result मिलता है. When in paralysis, you will see a spinal cord injury patient just putting him in a good diet. He revived after 16 years, 17 years. So I'll show you one example today. How was it possible? Can you go to my Facebook today? Winnie for a while.
Is one example, which is
Down. One down. Yeah, this. Can we take up the picture? MRI picture. MRI picture, yes. Now, what can someone explain me what is written in the MRI picture? Anand, Maurya, will you like to put some MRI picture? Anand Kumar Maurya?
Yes, sir. Sanjay, this side.
Sanjay, please put some light on the MRI picture.
So this is a transfer section cut off of the spinal cord.
Can you tell me what may be the probable reason of such a bad injury in L3 level?
Probability of lower limb weakness,
No.
paraplegia, both lower limbs.
Paraplegia was there for since long. Now, what may be the reason of having such a bad injury?
Port spine or injury, direct injury, RTA.
It is a gunshot injury.
Oh, it might be, definitely.
Yeah, it's a gunshot injury. And now, if you go to previous page, you will see the history of that person care of. Yeah, you can see number third point. Gunshot injury in 2004. This patient has visited US and other places, and his surgery was denied in US. When in Hyderabad, he went to the best hospital, and lastly Continental Hospital operated him and forwarded it to us. And today, if you see, can you see the video, first video?
The patient walking.
With the second video, first video. Go to other video, please.
So again, we can see a typical case of gunshot injury in 2004, where there is a serious canal stenosis, L3 for origin. Here you can see the case. The patient is paraplegic and a resident of Somalia by profession a driver. Thereafter he was shifted to India in 2021 and he was operated. Since then he was bedridden and on wheelchair. Today you can see how many days here? After 7 days, you can see.
In 7 days, you have to minus the 5 days. 2 days, we did not treat him because of the UTI infection.
उसका हाइट का तो ये मत होगा तो फिर ये मत ये That's all. हाँ So you can say one part of his walking, but walking currently he is almost recovered. उसको पीछे थोड़ा सा आगे को
आगे की ओर चलिए कमर को
मैं तुम मेरे कंधा से ये कंधे को थोड़ा सा ठंडा You can see a significant recovery in the first part. Now we'll see whether he can walk in this walker or not. This is a rare case of gunshot injury, spinal cord injury, total transaction. A gunshot injury was done in 2004, and then he came with serious channel stenosis, total paraplegic patient, right in 7 days. Yeah. उसके बाद
So, we conclude this video. Now, what do you see in this patient?
the patient walking
Stop.
because
That is enough. Finish the video. Let us go back to that brain axis. See, now you could see even there was a transaction injury from 2004. Now it is 2021. How many years he was on bed and wheelchair? 2004 to 2021. How many years?
17 years, sir.
7, yes.
7? No, 17 years, madam.
70, yes.
Can you believe a patient can walk after 4 days of treatment in 17 years? In such a severe transaction injury, where the patient was bedridden for how many years? 17 years. He was visited at US. Many hospitals, even in Delhi, denied surgery for this patient. And now you finally, Citizen Hospital, Continental Hospital operated him and referred it to us, and you can see in 5 days the patient is walking. So there is only the possibility of what? The neurotransmitters stable in the gut. If you know about very nicely about the gut-brain axis, recovering spinal cord injury does not become a problem. The problem is that we do not know many hidden facts. The injury is in the cord. I also say the injury is in the cord. The cord is no, here there is no cord. It is a caudal lacuna. But then the sciatic nerve was very badly injured. Cord is up to L1 level, D12 L1. Now, how do you regulate these people? After 15 years, we just found what? Gut-brain axis. We started working with his diet, little bit with his diet, and we found recovery in this patient in just 5 days. Whereas this type of patients, they never work. He did not work for 17 years. And today, if you see his quadriceps strength is very good. So you can understand how the neurotransmitters of the gut and brain interact and why you should eat a good food. Only brain stimulation does not help. Your fooding system and regulating your gut and why antibiotics are a drawback is what we have to understand now. Carry on with this video.
Serotonin, about 70% is created in our gut. Serotonin, some people know as the feel-good hormone. So if your gut's not producing adequate enough, you're not going to feel good. To put it this way, what does it do? It regulates mood. You feel more emotionally stable, less anxious, more focused, happier, and calmer. It regulates your appetite, your sleep. In a recent rat study, the speed of your memory. A deficiency of serotonin, if it's not built enough in your gut, depression, anxiety, panic. Recent report, possible role of serotonin deficiency in ADHD. So this highway that we're talking about, one of the key is the vagus nerve. It goes not only to the...
Now you can understand. If you don't give gut infection leads to brain disease. You can see 70% of the serotonin is produced where? In the gut. Now we are keep stimulating the brain, and if the gut is infected, you will never get results. That is why it is believed that more than 600 neuro diseases are developed from the gut. And this is the vagus nerve which is responsible for creating epilepsy. Now also is also responsible for ADHD, depression and all. So now you can see why SI channel was given so much importance in what? TCM, and it was elongated with heart as a fire channel. Why fire? Because it is co-associated with the brain, where heart and SI correlates with the brain in TCM. Similarly, in neuroscience, SI is correlated, gut is correlated with the brain through the vagus nerve. यानी वेगस नर्व के थ्रू ये ब्रेन के साथ जुड़ता है. Now you can understand why ADHD, depression, anxiety is created. यानी एंजाइटी एक्शन डेफिसिट हाइपर एक्टिविटी डिसऑर्डर क्यों क्रिएट होता है? क्यों? बिकॉज हम लोग का अच्छा सॉरी अब ठीक है.
हाँ अब ठीक है.
क्योंकि ये खान पीन में हम बाधित करते हैं. वी सफ़र बिकॉज ऑफ आवर फूड एक्टिविटी. नाउ if you see, one of my uncle again got cancer. In my family, this will be the fourth death because of cancer. And they had a habit of what? Eating Rajnigandha pan masala. On the other way, it does not harm anything, but it's a crude oil, petroleum, so that the upper part which you see, the flavors is attached to the cashew nut or something through this crude oil. I think it's petroleum. I don't remember very well, because the one who was the supplier was nearby Surat, Ajola. So they told me that yes, we are the supplier to Rajnigandha. In India, it is a mouth freshener. And we only came to know about it in the metastasis stage. So we'll go ahead with this. This is a very important topic. Why TCM people should very nicely focus on food. Why you should be very much concerned. Why Indians were very much concerned. Why Chinese people were very much concerned about the food. Yes, carry on, please.
The intestines, but to the liver, etc., etc. Okay? The vagus nerve is the primary channel of information between the hundreds of millions of nerve cells in our intestine and our central nervous system. So that now we're knowing the signals can go through that nerve. And here's the but also to the blood vessels. And here's where the battle is fought all the time. We just had lunch. It's being fought seriously right now. Okay. And that is, we know the brain can control the gut, but we're now learning, or these docs are now learning, and researchers, that what's happening in this battleground is going to affect how we feel, how we think, and neurological diseases. So we're going to now focus on this a little bit to understand that. This is just in May of this year in Nature, a top world publication. We're now getting ideas of how it affects the brain cells. From the gut, the bacteria create various metabolites. That's a general term. We should learn that. It's metabolites. There are all kinds of different things, okay? Metabolites can affect our immune cells of the nervous system. They're called microglia. They're actually quite small, but they've drawn them large here. Depending on the metabolite, the microglia can inflame your astrocytes, or it could de-inflame them, if you will, calm them down. So this metabolite is what I'm saying, the reason this is so important is that now we're seeing some of the pathways laid out. How does it affect our astrocytes? And why are the astrocytes important? They're going to regulate our synapses, the neuronal firing, and they protect the nerves from oxidative damage. So if our astrocytes are inflamed, our neurons aren't going to work as well, and they'll be dysfunctional. Here's a summary. The brain inflammatory cascade is controlled by gut-derived molecules. Wait. I'm here to learn about Chiari. What does the gut-brain axis have to do with Chiari? Okay. Well, think about all the myriads of symptoms that are part of Chiari. And these are the ones I've pulled out of that long list. Y'all can all look at them and see. How do we know that somebody presenting with Chiari, that all these symptoms are due to the Chiari? Because obviously neuroinflammation is widespread. It's common in a lot of us, okay? So if you're having poor memory, brain fog, poor sleep, you didn't recover fully as you expected after surgery, let's dig deeper. There may be something else. And so that's why we need to learn about neuroinflammation, is what's called. The inflammation that begins by what we put in our gut and how we intestines. The best known example of this is celiac disease, and I'm going to go over it just a little bit, show you the battleground in action. Okay? Celiac disease is an allergy to gluten in genetically susceptible individuals. Before farming, we did not consume gluten, or before agriculture, we did not consume gluten. Gluten came along with farming, and those that were not gluten allergic had more babies. The others were sicker. Okay? So the human population over time, there are less and less people that are allergic to gluten. So many people can tolerate grains, but still today, some do not. And there's a big battle going on. And this is where we've learned a lot. Now, there's a whole bunch of symptoms, for instance, short stature, etc., failure to thrive, but there are neurologic symptoms, irritability, behavioral issues, ADHD, fatigue, depression, peripheral neuropathy. We heard a lot about that today. Seizures, headaches. So it's a common disorder. This is a nice illustration of the battleground. Those are those little villi. That's the outside world. This is what we put in our gut is here. This is the healthy lining. And they have these little tight junctions. And gluten is trying to get in. What gluten can do, the gliadin protein part of gluten, is it breaks through. It's not trying to metabolize through the cell. It breaks through. The gut is sending a bunch of inflammatory molecules to kind of plug these off. These are lymphocytes to plug these holes. If it exists long enough, the cell lining is destroyed. You've heard of leaky gut. It's not that our gut is, our insides are leaking out. It's that the bad outside world is leaking in. It's getting into us, if you will. So again, people with gluten allergy. And gluten is in grains, especially wheat and rye, and it destroys the internal mucosa. Fortunately, we have these tight junctions right in the gut. The gliadin, the protein, the gluten protein can break into it. Lectins in grains and beans can break in, glycoalkaloids in potatoes, and they also inhibit the breakdown of bad things, if you will. So what happens to the gut? Villi. This is a micrograph of an actual villus. This is healthy. There's a break in here. There's a break in. Those inflammatory cells are having to be produced. They're trying to block the insult. But 42,000 children still die each year from this disorder. Break-in of
Can you
gluten
stop?
into our gut.
Can you stop
we
here?
have a quote blood-brain
Can you
barrier.
stop here?
And
So we have seen three things: that the food we eat, especially gluten, non-veg, how it hampers our gut. You could see how astrocytes. One day Anand Moria was asking me a question regarding astrocytes, how depression is created. I hope I have answered these questions today. How ADHD is created because of what? The food and all this which we eat. Why the children triggers, especially because of the chocolates, artificial sugars. This, see, we go with the tongue. We never go with the gut. So all these times we study about the point Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, how to recover the disease. But how the disease is created, did we understand that part? क्या हम समझ पाए बीमारी कैसे क्रिएट होती है? बीमारी का जड़ मूल तो क्या है? तो इसको गट कहते हैं. गट में आप देख सकते हैं एक माइक्रोगेलिया हाउ इट इज़ प्रोड्यूस्ड एंड वो जाके एस्ट्रोसाइट को डैमेज करता है. उसके बाद सिनाप्स डैमेज होता है. दैट मीन्स इट डैमेजेस द सिनाप्स एंड इन ऑर्डर दैट न्यूरल कम्युनिकेशन डू नॉट टेक प्लेस and patients suffer from a neurological disease. It is the same thing which we have from the Parkinson's. So, here you can see what is the biggest difficulty in treating depression is not because of medicines. Medicines, that is why it is said, food is thy medicine. Medicine is not food. Write down. Food is thy medicine, and medicine is not thy food. So, the food you ate, like gluten, dairy, during leaky gut, the gut was tight earlier. So, all these microorganisms do not go. But the moment you eat this gluten, this is roti, bread, what it happens? It goes to the gut and it destroys the gut. The moment the gut is destroyed, what will happen? You can see even diabetes was created because of gluten toxicity. The moment I have stopped my rotis, my sugar is in control. Earlier I was having, my sugar was 700, and when I used to eat rotis and all, I found this is there. So when I stopped mine and patients, we found sugar drastically has reduced. डायबिटीज के लिए ये एक मूल भाव है, इसलिए आयुर्वेद में अपथ्य और पथ्य को कहा गया है. That is why in Ayurveda is do's and don'ts about the disease was said, and most important was gut brain axis, because gut access है access to the brain. Now whatever you take syndopa and all are not stimulated in the brain, it is stimulated in the gut, because anything which is higher than 50 deltons cannot enter the brain. So it stimulates where? In the gut. 70% of the dopamine is generated in the gut, as we have seen. Serotonin, so as in, if you see, Parkinson and all this is created where? In the gut. Am I clear? कोई डाउट है तो आप पूछिए प्लीज. इफ यू हैव एनी डाउट प्लीज कम अप. Up to this level, do you have any doubts?
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, this is Anand Maurya. Sir, please explain again the how the glial cell is going to damage here.
Meaning, Vinny, can you go little back, little? Go little more back. Go little more back. Little back. Go. Go little more. Go little more. Go before celiac. Go more. Yeah. Little more. Little more back. या स्टार्ट. मौर्य जी आप देखिए इसको. प्ले प्लीज विनी.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last word.
हाँ प्ले PLAY प्ले प्ले.
Researchers that what's happening in this battleground is going to affect how we feel, how we think, and neurological diseases. So we're going to now focus on this a little bit to understand that This is just in May of this year in Nature, a top world publication. We're now getting ideas of how it affects the brain cells. From the gut, the bacteria create various metabolites. That's a general term. We should learn that. Metabolites, there are all kinds of different things. Okay. Metabolites can affect our immune cells of the nervous system. They're called microglia. They're actually quite small, but they've drawn large here. Depending on the metabolite, the microglia can inflame your astrocytes, or it could de-inflame them, if you will, calm them down. So this metabolite is what I'm saying, the reason this is so important is that now we're seeing some of the pathways laid out. How does it affect our astrocytes? And why are the astrocytes important? They're going to regulate our synapses, the neuronal firing, and they protect the nerves from oxidative damage. So if our astrocytes are inflamed, our neurons aren't going to work as well, and they'll be dysfunctional. Here's a summary. The brain inflammatory cascade is controlled by gut-derived molecules. Wait. I'm here to learn about Chiari. What does the gut-brain axis have to do with Chiari? Okay. Well, think about all the myriads of symptoms that are part of Chiari. And these I've pulled out of that long list.
Moriaji, did you understand what they spoke?
Sir, you can explain because the sound is not clear. The wordings are echo.
You can see there is a code called, you can see a bacteria, you can see in your language certain things are developed inside our gut. It is called microglia.
Yes,
The byproduct is developed, is called microglia. This microglia hampers what? The neural cells.
Okay, sir.
Right? And they also injure the astrocytes.
Okay.
Now, what is the work of astrocytes and all? They protect the primary neurons. Yes or no?
Yes, sir. They support the neurons.
Yes. ये तो लंगूर का आवाज है.
He's also there, sir.
मार्क बंद करके भी पहचान लेता कौन बात कर रहा है. So, now the most important problem which we are facing in our society is facing physiotherapist. You will see, along with this difficulty which we face in post ICU cases, all these are there. Of Chiari 1. And this is created from where? The guts. Now, whatever you stimulate, if you don't correct your fooding habits and if you don't stop gluten and all, what will happen? What will happen? That is why I say you have to study acupuncture very nicely, because it illustrates the gut brain axis. It helps you to correct the gut. So the channel mobilization of what? Axis of the small intestines with the gut and the brain. So microbes generated in the gut destroys the what?
Astrocytes.
Brain. A simple language. Bad bacteria of the gut. Write down a simple sentence. Bad bacteria of the gut are responsible for the destruction of the brain and creation of large number of diseases. That is called neuroinflammation. सिंपल सेंटेंस में, उल्टे सीधा खाना खाने से, अपचन होने से बैड बैक्टीरिया क्रिएट होते हैं जो बहुत सारी बीमारियों का क्रिएशन करते हैं. Now even you can understand where there is no neurological problem, numbness and tingling continues in the patient. You see, there is no sleep, there is nothing, even there is numbness and tingling. Why? Because it is a symptom of Chiari syndrome. Did you ever heard about Chiari? So write down some neurological symptoms of Chiari. Today I got a post-COVID patient who was suffering from medication of schizophrenia, and I found with his history he is suffering from Chiari syndrome. Because there were four symptoms with him. What? Panic attacks, depression, fatigue, poor sleep. The moment you have poor sleep, the lymphatic system will not work and you will suffer from neurological degenerative diseases. Did you understand me? Any doubt at this point of time?
No, sir.
I am teaching
Sir,
you the
this
cause
thing,
of the disease.
sir, this thing is correct, correct or false? The taste or the type of food which we served.
हाँ बताइए मौर्य जी.
Sir, which one is correct? The taste we want or the type of food we eat?
The type of food we eat. इसलिए in Hindi it is said, खाने के लिए मत जियो, जीने के लिए खाओ.
But for example, my brain just want to eat a sweet, but unfortunately the sweet is made up of something wrong
Artificial
item,
sugar. Yeah,
artificial.
that is why it is said. Food is thy medicine. Medicine is not food.
But sugar cane is a
Sugar
just
cane,
natural product.
see, taking normal sugar cane juice is not a disease. It's not a creation of disease. But
Means
taking this artificial sugar,
okay,
चीनी, गुड़ खाना नुकसानदायक नहीं है. चीनी, आइसक्रीम्स,
means
cakes.
okay, means the product which is available now is wrong.
Yes. Even if you see Bornvita, is a very wrong drink. Do you know that? It is a creation of ADHD and Alzheimer's, Horlicks and Bornvita. Can you tell me why? Why this is not a healthy drink? हाँ भाई लंगूर, why Bornvita is not a healthy drink? Langur?
He is addicted to beer, sir.
कहाँ गया लंगूर?
I think he is available.
Maybe driving anyway. So, when we come under this disease, now we understood the cause of the disease and why gluten is restricted. Many people ask me this question again and again. Why do I restrict gluten in the food? Because gluten bacteria destroys the gut. इसलिए in Hindi it is said, जैसा खाओ के अन्न वैसा होगा मन. The food you eat creates your mood. The moment when I give them to restrict this food and when they are restricted in these people, within 6 days, 7 days, I see a terrific change in ADHD cases. First day they struggle a lot for putting needles, but on the 6th day, you will laugh. They will count the needles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll place those videos of autism and ADHD children. and they recover more than 70% in just 1 month, whereas they are suffering from this from last 5 to 6 years. So can we go to the last slide where we have stopped Chiari syndrome and all we have seen? So can you go fast forward? Inflammation and depression. No. Yes. Please. Here.
In here. There's a break in. Those inflammatory cells are having to be produced. They're trying to block the insult, but 42,000 children still die each year from this disorder, break in of gluten into our gut. But fortunately, we have a quote blood brain barrier. And so it's not going to get into the brain, right? Well, unfortunately, they have tight junctions, and there are ways now that that stuff is breaking into the brain, in particular through weak lectin. And there are others in a book called Brain Maker that I need to review. But here's the nitty gritty.
Can you stop?
Broken down. What does that mean?
You stop. See, we have our blood-brain barrier. Most of the things do not enter our brain because of this blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier होने के कारण बहुत कुछ हमारे ब्रेन में एंटर नहीं कर पाता है, which is higher than 50 Dalton. But if you see lecithin, which is a product of gluten, it penetrates the blood-brain barrier because its molecular size is small, and then you can see how many autoimmune disease, gluten autoimmune disease can be produced. रोटी खाने से कितनी बड़ी झमेला क्रिएट होता है, ब्रेड खाने से कितना बड़ा झमेला क्रिएट होता है, बियर पीने से कितना बड़ा झमेला क्रिएट होता है. Now you can see it here. So it has been months I have not eaten chapati, but once I ate roti in Vrindavan when I went recently. My goodness, it was all day vomiting for me, whole night I vomited. Then I realized, oh, it's a gluten disease which I am suffering from. So immediately I have stopped all type of artificial sugar, all types of. I have restricted all types of gluten in my food. And now my health is what? Quite better. Otherwise, when I was on gluten and rotis, I used to have a pain, unbearable pain. It was difficult for me to walk one step or two step. Those who used to come to my previous seminar, they see how I hold people and walk. मैं बहुत मुश्किल से चल पाता था because multiple joint pain. It was not even arthritis, I don't know. But then when I understood it is gluten poisoning, I immediately stopped gluten, and now you can see I walk and I'm per day I see more than 100 patients. So you can see what is gluten ataxia, and you can understand how important is food. So any doubt at this point of time? It's a very important topic which you must understand. Any doubt?
Sir, even the rheumatic or arthritis also one of the cause.
Yes, you are very correct. All the autoimmune diseases generally are diseased. It is said autoimmune diseases are generated in the gut. Even your angerness, your frustration is generated in the gut. Yes. And that is why it is said gut feeling.
And gluten's molecules are one of the that cross the
Gluten,
brain barrier.
artificial sugar, non-vegetarian items, and that is why please write down one sentence, the tagline. Food is thy medicine. Food is thy medicine. Medicine is not food. This is how antibiotics destroys our gut, and it is the biggest drawback we are having, recurrent of UTI. That is why I have spoken to these people how to rechange the water in Hyderabad. We realized that the water in Hyderabad is a low alkaline level, and that is why most of the patients in Hyderabad, they have what? Suffering from frequency of UTI, for which we have to give antibiotic. Immediately we concluded, and this conclusion was made with me within just 4 or 5 days back. Because every report which I see, every day we put RL, they say Rigers. एंड द मोमेंट ट्रिगर्स आते हैं बार बार कब कब ही छूटती है अचानक से, समझ में नहीं आ रहा 10 ml थोड़ा सा कुछ दिया नहीं, बुखार सर दर्द. Then we understood, oh, these restrictions were also put up in what? Homeopathic medicines. Because the makers of the subjects knew the influence of food in our. इसलिए रोटी को अपत्य कहा गया बात रोग में. Means roti is made of gluten, made of atta, has been restricted. Cakes, pastries. Now you can understand how much poison we are giving to our children, and that is why our children are becoming what? Day by day more addicted to mobile, more addicted for this, and because of mobile addiction, because of this, what has happened? What has happened? Neuroinflammation, यानी ब्रेन की बर्बादी, and then you progressively suffer and you die with the disease.
So may I ask?
Yes.
So then diabetes can be classified as a gluten autoimmune disease?
Pardon me, madam?
Can diabetes, can it be classified
Yes,
as a
you can
gluten
say
autoimmune?
it is one gluten plays a major role in increasing the blood sugar of the patient. Now you see, I showed you in one of the previous year class, my sugar is more than 650. You said, sir, please take rest, please take rest. It's too high sugar. I measured and showed you. I said, let us see after 1 hour. I punctured few points, and then you saw the sugar was less than 120 before the class ended. I took the class somehow at 650, although I was drowsy that day. But today you will see my sugar, general sugar level is below 199.66. I am not taking any diabetic tablet. Just because I restricted my diet, my health has done good. Even cancer is created because of all this nonsense. And we take too much antibiotics because too much painkillers. That is why I am teaching you how to work with pain without medicines. Because it destroys the gut ultimately. It destroys the liver cells. जब सब कुछ बर्बाद हो जाएगा तो क्या बचा फिर? When everything is destroyed in the body, what is left? Is disease. Go and suffer from progressive disease. Now you understood why I call him Frustu. Because his gut is damaged. Wherever you see frustrated people, you can understand his gut is what?
Damage.
Yes. We're suffering from high depression. You can see all the Faujis, right? Higher officers in army, they are so much irritation. High irritation is found on these people. Right from
Hypertension
captain.
and diabetes.
No.
Two are the big-
Hypertension and all is okay. But if you see the irritability of these people, they get easily irritable. Their ego is very high. You know why?
Because of gut problem.
Because the food what they eat in morning.
Because the food they consume regularly destroys their gut. Now, if the gut is not correct, what will happen? All the treatment you do is waste. Now, if the patient is continuously on antibiotics, how will you sustain his gut? Again, antibiotics will create lot of negative microbes. Again, it will have neuroinflammation. That is why B.M. Hegre said, we are creator of diseases, not a treatable of this. Treatment of disease is not in our hand, but we create our own disease. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So, any question at this point of time? Now you can understand how neurodegenerative diseases are created. Yes, please tell me who is saying, sir. Please ask.
So my question is that is jawar and bajra safe or even?
That I do not know.
Okay, sir.
Don't ask me much about food because I don't know much about food. But I know what is prohibited and how I have restricted my diet. That's all.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Many, can you please proceed?
Me physically, why should I worry about it? Well, one of the worst conditions is gluten ataxia. The gluten antibodies attack your normal major cells of the cerebellum. So this is an autoimmune disease. Your body's trying to defend, and unfortunately, it mistakes some of our normal tissue and it destroys those. That's autoimmune. Our immune system is working against us, and it's knocking out the Purkinje cells, and that's a bad ataxia, difficult to walk, headaches, difficulty with speech. Or if it hits your spinal ganglion, you're going to have numbness, tingling, and coordination. Or if it hits your peripheral nerve, burning, numbness, tingling, pain in the fingers, toes, and coordination and weakness. So a lot of neurological. Now, people say, well, yeah, okay, I understand celiac disease, but what about this gluten sensitivity? People that don't have celiac disease, are they really sensitive to gluten? Well, some seem to be sensitive. Here's non-celiac gluten sensitivity, 14-year-old girl presenting with psychosis. She sees people coming out of the TV to scare her. When she goes to sleep at night, unusual hallucinations, gluten-free diet, and she's asymptomatic within a week. So let's get down into the disorders that we're here to kind of discuss and know that some of our folks with Chiari malformation and some of us without Chiari malformation may have. One is obviously depression, right? Inflammation and depression. I learned that depression was a psychological disorder. How many people you might know that are depressed and they don't really know why? Well, the scientists are telling us we need to start thinking of this as an inflammatory and degenerative disorder. Yes, a serious life event can make you depressed, I understand, but chronic ongoing depression is probably not psychological. It is the clinical expression of inflammation from central microglial activation. So the other term, you've learned metabolites. Microglia is something we need to kind of begin to think about. There are brain immune cells that are trying to work for us, okay? So here's suicidal thinking. We lost two prominent people a few months ago to suicide that were in the press, right? We wondered what was the psychological issue going on. We didn't wonder, is it neuroinflammation? So the anterior cingulate gyrus processes emotions and behavior. They did a fascinating study. It was only in 14 people with a major depressive episode. They put them in a PET scanner and looked for a protein marker of inflammation of the microglia. We're back to microglia. In summary, basically, what was interesting is in the 9 people that had suicidal ideation, they actually thought about it. Those were the ones that had their microglia inflamed. So you could now do a test, a PET scan, to see how is somebody, if they want it, do they have suicidal ideation? So the inflammation is correlating with this desire, if you will. And so, again, to me, this opens up a whole new way of understanding how we can help folks in this condition. Fortunately, there's good news. Whole foods lower the risk of depression. Over 3,000 patients, they either had a processed food diet or a whole food diet. Mean age 55. People who ate processed foods more likely to be diagnosed with depression. They noted a whole food diet heavily loaded in vegetables, fruits, and fish was protective against depression. Okay? Memory and thinking. High fructose diet alters your brain's ability to learn.
Stop. Now you can understood how gluten has destroyed the brain, and it is one of the key role plays in depression and psychogenic disorders, especially neuroinflammation. It is very much clear to us that what is the cause of the disease, who has created the disease. Now, little back, my one friend was saying, my intimate friend was saying, that his intimate friend likes beer and he is suffering from an autoimmune disease. Now, can you tell me, you are suffering from an autoimmune disease and you like all those things to take, which will destroy your body and it will create neuroinflammation in your body. One disease leads to other disease. Is it correct to eat those type of food? थोड़ी देर पहले मेरे एक बहुत घनिष्ठ मित्र ने यहाँ कहा क्या कि उनके घनिष्ठ मित्र चॉकलेट खाने की इच्छा करते हैं, कुछ मीठा खाने की इच्छा करते हैं और ये मिठाई की दुकान में जाकर ये चॉकलेट खाकर अपने मन की तृप्ति करते हैं. Means it satisfied his mood by eating a particular type of sweet. But did you ever analyze after eating sweet how greatly you feel relaxed and then after some time you get irritated and angry? So artificial sugar, in any way, whenever you come to my seminar, you will see I don't eat food from the catering side. I eat my own food. I hardly take very little of the sweet. Yes, so in cardiac arrest in Rajesh and many youngsters at the age of 35, 36, they are having what? Cardiac arrest. Why? Because of gluten toxicity. You can understand in suicidal tendencies, बहुत सारे लोग सुसाइड करते हैं, फौज में भी करते हैं. इट इज जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ ग्लूटेन टेंडेंसी. And that is why we always say high sugar, artificial sugar. Destroys the child. Why we are having so much autistic and autism child? Because of this healthy drinks, especially Red Bull and all. They are very dangerous. Coca-Cola. So you can understand by eating this type of food, you are inviting and knocking a door for whom? Suicide. You are knocking a door for all this autoimmune disease. That's why he said, sir, can autoimmune disease be recovered by acupuncture? I said yes, provided these things has to be done. You never studied about the cause of the disease. You said cause. Is Vimarika cause care? Now you can understand how strokes are created, why paralysis is not recovered. Post ICU recovery is so difficult. Can you understand this? Huh? Why there is so much wasting of muscles? Please carry on. Is the University of California, Los Angeles. They have studied these things. Please carry on with this video. Any, please play over it.
Remember information. Fortunately, omega-3 fatty acids minimize the damage. Unfortunately, high fructose corn syrup is even put in our baby food nowadays. Inflammation and thinking. And I want a new term, or a term to remember also, is C-reactive protein. We'll talk about it several times. What about your thinking? This marker of inflammation, HSCRP, in stroke-free individuals, over 400, a high CRP correlated with difficulty executive thinking, which means planning, decision-making, and self-control. So if there's someone with an issue there, we want to know what their CRP is. It might be because they're inflamed. Their brain is inflamed. And unfortunately, a high CRP is associated with actual disintegration of some of the frontal pathways of our brain, which we obviously don't want. Okay. And then another recent publication, just this June, in Nature.
So those who came previous to this seminar, especially Anand Maurya time, they saw my mother was suffering, and suddenly she suffered because of the high CRP rate. Her rate when CRP was very high. Why? We realized the food, the gluten has created so much poison in our body that we used to give lot of antibiotics to reduce the CRP level. But this antibiotic destroyed the entire brain pathway, and because of this she had brain meningitis and she died a very pathetic death. That is the reason. Instead of propagating much about our traditional methods of antibiotics and all, I found out a new way of treating patients, which revives the patient and controlling his diets recovers him. That is why you will get lot of complaints in our kitchen. The food is not good, this is not good, that is not good. But and now you can also understand gut vagal sensory signaling regulates the hippocampus functions, the multi pathways. You can understand why epilepsy is created and how gut brain is memory is control in the gut brain axis. Am I clear to all of you, or you want to know more on this, or any questions at this point of time? Any questions at this point of time?
So, question to the previous one, sir.
Huh?
So, before this, you have given one explanation which said that wasting of muscle is because of Parkinson.
See, already I have explained. Wasting of muscle is what? Because of infection in the gut.
Okay.
And CRP is one of the marker of neuroinflammation.
Okay, sir.
C-reactive protein. Sir. All those who are post-stroke patients and all, you will see there is a high CRP in these patients. Even in our clinic, we regularly see high CRP in post-stroke patients and all.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, even after vaccination, many patients are found they raise the CRP level, even they face the mini stroke.
Yes, actually, this vaccine has been a RNA vaccine, so it affects the gut. That is why in Australia, many integrative physicians have denied to take it. They have filed court cases. Lot of issues are going with these vaccinations. Even you'll see certain vaccination has made the children autistic child.
Even I personally feel after second dose, my left hand is going to weak.
So you should take my treatment.
Now it's okay.
No, it's okay. Then why are you discussing when it is okay?
I am
Otherwise, I would
discussing
have put
because
you in a package of
because
1,20,000.
my RA patient, which is not RA positive CRP, everything is negative. After second vaccination, RA is going to positive and CRP left is going too much high, such a level. They diagnose the now it's a RA patient. Previously, is doesn't know
No.
what
See,
is
in
the
RA positive cases, CRP will not be high. There are two types of positive cases: seropositive, seronegative. When the C reactive protein is high, it should be first ruled out as seronegative arthritis. Can you hear me?
yes sir.
So rheumatoid arthritis can be ruled out in a different way. It is to be seropositive arthritis, not seronegative. CRP is a infection, is a part of what infection and all. So generally, this type of disease are found. CRP is elevated in seronegative. What RA factor, ASO, ANA, and other blood symptoms like ANA, ASO, RA. What else? ह्यूमेटिक प्रोफाइल टेस्ट में क्या क्या आता है, अब तो भूल भी गए. ANA, ASO, RA, uric acid. These four tests are there. But if the CRP is high, you have to think differently.
ESR.
ESR तो दोनों में elevated पाएगा. If the person is suffering from ankylosing spondylitis, his CRP and ESR will be always elevated. But then one symptom of diagnosis does not diagnose the disease. Out of 5, 3 must be correct.
Yes sir, yes sir.
He is suffering from ankle spone. He should have bilaterally. He should have what? Sacroiliitis. If it is unilateral sacroiliitis, it is infective form of a disease. It may be a infective disease. That means a POTS. This is a tuberculosis, TB, bone TB, what we call it. If it's unilateral sacroiliitis, but if it is bilateral sacroiliitis, it becomes what? Ankylosing spondylitis. But again, ankylosing cannot be supported with one. So you have to go with HLA-B27, you have to go with CRP, ESR, and then you must also examine with X-ray as well as with the what? MRI. So out of 5, 3 must be indicating the disease. 5 to 6 tests are done. This is why in an allopathic system we don't classify a disease with one symptom. We found its metastasis, we go with PET scan, then we go with biopsy, then we go with the tumor marking, we then go for tumor grading, and then various tests to classify which kind of disease he has suffered from. Please play the video.
Feature as well, and it is the speed of memory is important. Basically, the hippocampus is affected. Our main storage area for memories is affected by what's going on in the gut. Dementia, it's a severe problem. Excess dietary carbohydrates, particularly fructose, along with a deficiency of fats and cholesterol, which we were misled by the McGovern Commission at the end of the 70s that we were supposed to be afraid of fat. And what did the food companies do? They put in sugar in the food, more sugar. And what do we have now? An epidemic in diabetes. This leads to cholesterol deficiency in the neuron, which affects brain function. Now, we test for prediabetes in our neurosurgical clinic, and some people ask me, well, why are you looking for diabetes? Okay, I think it's a responsibility of all physicians, because diabetes, I'll show you later on, is an epidemic. It's a responsibility of all physicians to do some of these basic tests, because they're not being done routinely in the primary care setting. Or
when you have pressed one button on the left side, please
have diabetes, but
carry on, please.
Pre-diabetes, and sure enough, it increases your chances of dementia. So we need to find pre-diabetes for two reasons. One, it can be bad by itself. Two, I don't want to find out when we have diabetes. I'd rather know before so I can begin to make the changes then. Okay? Fortunately, again, we've got guidelines now that can help us. Now, ketotic diet is specialized. I'm going to touch on it later on. I don't generally recommend it right off the bat. But ketosis enhances memory and mild cognitive impairment. Very low carbohydrate consumption can improve memory in Alzheimer's disease. And this is the study here. Probiotics, they took two groups and they made a mix. One was milk and another a little drink of probiotics that looked like milk. So it was a randomized trial. It was small, 30 in each group. But the group on the inflammation-reducing probiotics did not decline brain function, but actually improved by these scores, and they said that's a huge improvement. They were surprised that probiotics by themselves could make such a difference in this randomized blinded trial. Parkinson's disease. Dr. Parkinson, James Parkinson, in 1817 described a shaking palsy. He had 6 cases. Interestingly, one of his cases got better if you treated the gastrointestinal problems. And wouldn't it be fascinating if somebody would have carried this little nugget 200 years ago and helped us understand that it started in the gut? It's only now that we're waking up as a scientific community. Oh, Parkinson's seems to start in the gut. Okay. So let's look at Parkinson's. It's believed to be caused by chronic low-grade inflammation of the gut, which results in blood-brain barrier leakage. Okay, we've got leaky gut. Now we're learning about leaky brain. It's leaking into the brain, and neuroinflammation in the brain. So bottom line is what they're saying is we may have a marker to predict who might get Parkinson's disease by just simply looking at their gut and testing this marker. Here's a recent review for anyone who's interested, recently published. There's a new one that I just saw the other day. Does Parkinson's begin in the gut? And here's what they say. The vagus nerve may be the primary route through the pathological triggers of Parkinson's travel from the GI tract to the brain. Microbes could be acting through metabolites to activate microglia, the immune cells in the brain, terms that now we should be getting a little more familiar with. So this is there's a lot of work being done. It's hard to keep up with this. Frankly, every week I'll find something online as to new work. We're going to learn more. It's probably more complex even than this. But clearly, different directions, we're learning that we have an area of health to focus on. And ketone infusions in mice partially protect against this neurodegeneration, and that keto bodies may be a novel neuroprotective therapy for Parkinson's disease. If somebody has it, then obviously you want to think about a ketone leaning a nutritional approach. And then there are many others. I can't go over all of them, so I'm just going to give you a list. These are disorders that research is at least underway, looking at neuroinflammation as a possible underlying cause. ADHD, anorexia, autism, anxiety, chronic fatigue, obsessive compulsive, pseudotumor, and some of the others, even Tourette's and schizophrenia, frankly. So why the decline in human health? Okay, our hunter-gatherer ancestors were actually healthier and taller than we were. Yes, they say, well, they didn't live as long, and that's incorrect as well. The average age in the late Paleolithic was 35, and that dropped down into the low 30s in Roman. The worst was during the Black Plague with an average age of about 25. It wasn't until the 1800s that we beat the Paleolithic lifespan. We beat it by controlling infectious disease and delivery of children, basically, was two of the main areas. So the four reasons, which I can't go into in detail, each one of these is a lecture, is the agricultural revolution. Farmers are shorter and sicker. Unfortunately, Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, he thought that people were irrational. And basically, in the early 1900s in the U.S., the goal was to convert us from citizens to consumers. If we would be turned into consumers, we would be more easily controlled, is actually the thinking at that time. And the way to do it is by psychological marketing. And it's not buy what we need, but let's make people want things and keep them. And again, this is a whole talk by itself. And again, I've mentioned the McGovern Commission. It falsely villainized fat. And then another reason we got into trouble is the food pyramid of 92. I will touch on that in a minute. But how can we reclaim our health? I'm not going to go in detail in the ancestral diet, like I've done in the past, but we will touch on it a little bit. What can we learn from our ancestors? So the book I read was by, called The Paleo Diet, you saw it earlier, was by a professor of health and exercise at Colorado State University, one of the world's leading experts. He published The Paleo Diet in 2002. I happened to find it in 2003. A very extensive bibliography. The key thing is he analyzed hunter-gatherer societies that were still around, and some are still around, over 200 or about 200 hunter-gatherers. What did they eat? Why was their health better, if you will? Then the first book on this textbook, medical textbook, is by Staffan Lindberg from Sweden, published initially in Swedish in 2003, U.S. edition 2010, over 2,000 references backing up the argument of what we think our ancestor health was like, okay? But one slide to me shows it all. Look at these little boys, okay? And this just happened to be one I ran into. They're Kitavans in the Trobriand Islands. They've ate their ancestral diet. They continue their ancestral lifestyle. That's how they look when they're young. The thing is they live a long, long time. This is a 100-year-old Kitavan. Okay, and when Lindeberg looked at, although it wasn't a super detailed study, when he looked at the 6,000 Kitavans, there was no sign of dementia. So dementia is viewed as a Western disease. Just let me summarize it by that. Now, you might say, okay, this is all out in the public and fad and all this and that and the other. But we've got a journal like Diabetes, Metabolic Syndrome, and Obesity saying that when compared to ancestral diets, the modern diet with dense acellular carbohydrates promote an inflammatory microbiome and may be the primary cause for, in particular, obesity. When they looked at ancestral foods, virtually all ancestral foods have markedly lower carbohydrate densities than flour and sugar-containing foods. A diet of grain-free whole foods may produce a microbiome consistent with our evolutionary condition and explain the benefits of the modern Paleolithic diet in satisfaction, that's satiety, and metabolism. So there's certainly medical backup. Yeah, if you want one nugget to begin to kind of think a little more about what we consume, look at the omega-3 to omega-3 6 ratio. Think about, is your oil that you're using to cook or the product you're consuming, is it high? We need both of these fatty acids. Our brain does. but we need them in balance, roughly 1 to 1 if we can get them. Unfortunately, our diet is very heavy. And here's a high omega-6 to 3 found in today's Western diet promotes the pathogenesis of
Vinny, can you tell me the author of Paleo Diet? I'd like to give that book to you. Can you go a little back? Paleo Diet. Play. You'll get the
in 2010, over 2,000 references backing up the argument of what we think our ancestors. Okay. But one slide to me shows it all. Look at these little boys, okay? This just happened to be one I ran into. They're
one more
Catawbans
writer
in
is
the
said on Paleo Diet. See who's that?
ate their ancestral diet.
No, I find a book for you. But you want the author, right?
The name of the author.
Okay.
Paleo Diet author.
Diet. They continue their ancestral lifestyle. That's how they look when they're young. The thing is they live a long, long time. This is a 100-year-old Catawban. Okay. And when Lindeberg looked at, although it wasn't a super detailed study, when he looked at the 6,000 Catawbans, there was no sign of dementia. So dementia is viewed as a Western disease. Just let me summarize it like that. Now, you might say, okay, this is all out in the public and fad and all this and that and the other. But we've got a journal like Diabetes, Metabolic Syndrome, and Obesity saying that when compared to ancestral diets, the modern diet with dense acellular carbohydrates promote an inflammatory microbiome and may be the primary cause for in particular obesity. When they looked at ancestral foods, virtually all ancestral foods have markedly lower carbohydrate densities than flour and sugar-containing foods. A diet of grain-free whole foods may produce a microbiome consistent with our evolutionary condition and explain the benefits of the modern Paleolithic diet in satisfaction, satiety, and metabolism. So there's certainly medical backup. Now, if you want one nugget to begin to think a little more about what we consume, look at the omega-3 to omega-3 6 ratio. Is the oil that you're using to cook or the product you're consuming, is it high? We need both of these fatty acids. Our brain does. But we need them in balance, roughly 1 to 1 if we can get them. Unfortunately, our diet is very heavy. And here's a high omega-6 to 3 found in today's Western diet promotes the pathogenesis of many diseases, including cardiovascular, cancer, osteoporosis, and inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. Okay? So here is the ancestral diet pyramid. Okay, this one is by Mark Sisson of Mark's Daily Apple. He calls his diet the primal diet, and basically vegetables and fruits are at the bottom. As in other words, have a lot of vegetables and fruits. That's a 1 to 1 omega-3 to omega-6. This is the pyramid we were sold in 1992, and only recently have they finally retired. Very inflammatory, high omega-6. What I read, and I haven't gone into depth, is there was a lot of pressure from the industry to get this down as our basic foods supply. And I think the final thought I'll leave you with is take care of your gut. Care of you. Thank you.
We'll close it.
I sent it.
You may ask your question.
No, the book title I sent to you.
Because in numbers, we will
Okay, finish. Ask your question. Ask your questions. Ask your questions.
गुड इवनिंग सर.
कौन बोल रहे हैं? Who's speaking?
सर सिद्धेश्वर स्पीकिंग फ्रॉम चेन्नई.
हाँ
सिद्धेश्वर.
हाँ सिद्धेश्वर, टेल मी.
Sir, in case of diabetes mellitus or type 2 diabetes, the liver hypofunction or hyperfunction of the liver is the one of the major cause for this elevated sugar or declined sugar in the blood.
How did you conclude this?
Yes,
How did you
because
conclude?
I am treating this type of patients in particular.
No, treatment is okay. How did you conclude?
This is by report and using your techniques and taking
No,
the.
no. How did you conclude that the hypofunction and hyperfunctioning of the liver is
Yes,
the
yes.
reason of the functioning of diabetes, and the
Yes,
gut
yes.
does not play the role?
Because even though the islet cells or beta cells secretes the hormone, the insulin which is not sensed by the liver is going on producing the
What is
glucose.
producing? Liver is what producing? What kind of
Glucose.
juice?
Glucose.
Glucose is produced by pancreas or liver?
Liver also.
Which kind of juice produces?
Pancreas is producing only insulin, not the sugar. That is open, as you said, is open the lid to enter the glucose into the cells. That is the action of the insulin.
Then? So what do you want to say from this?
No, how to, what are the organs is to be treated in controlling sugar, and diabetic reversal is possible in case of diabetes mellitus.
See, I am not saying in case we have studied that in case of stenosis or anything metabolic disorders, these things happen. But here the main question was, what does gut create? Hyperfunctioning of the liver, hypofunctioning of the liver, the role of liver in diabetes, it's yet to be known in research papers. Maybe you have read somewhere. I don't disregard with your studies. To the best of my knowledge, the primary role goes with the gut and the brain. Because gut destroys the brain, it elevates stress level and the sugar level is elevated in the body. This is a primary study which was made long before and still it is continued. Hyperfunctioning and hypofunctioning of the liver may result to high level of diabetes, may not result to high level of diabetes, because in many cases the hepatic cellular carcinoma where the liver was low functioning, even in my case when SGPT, SGOT and all this were elevated, the sugar was not elevated. I was suffering from, during my period of dengue, all this was elevated, but my sugar was hypoglycemic. So, concluding facts will be not easy for us, but the role of gut and gluten is ascertained in what? Maybe the liver juice certainly plays a role in digestion of the food. That is why we give what? Liver enzymes in amino acids to the patients who are suffering from post-stroke patients. All the liver juice enzymes we give like through TPN, glutathione and all. Liver is a primary organ. It is in TCM also it is said is the commander in chief of the army.
So
But so
what is the role of the HP axis in case of high glucose in the blood?
see
HPA
that is
axis.
huh?
HPA axis, yeah, hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis,
See that
which is
topic.
also responsible for the elevation of the glucose in the
See
blood.
there are many factors which are responsible for the elevation of sugar. We already told you when stress factor oxidative stress is high, T cells are generated by the body. That is reduced resistance of the body is reduced. The digestion power is reduced. Well, how is this is created? Our topic is today is just a simple topic of gut brain axis, not diabetes mellitus. So in diabetes mellitus, gut brain plays a role. It has been proved by the author of this university and integrative medicine school in Australia that gut brain axis plays a role in diabetes. Gluten and such other products plays a role. The topic over here is this, right?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. One more question, please. Even our administering insulin as well as mono or polytryptophan, even the glucose levels cannot be bring down. Why this happens? Even if their fasting sugar is 400 or 380 or something.
That's a different matter. When we'll discuss about diabetes mellitus, we'll discuss about that topic. Our topic is today about gut brain axis, right?
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
More questions, please.
Dr. Sastri, I'd like to ask my question.
Please tell me.
How can NIBS help reduce the damage in the gut brain itself? Could you share more on your experience?
See, NIBS has a own role in damaging the damage, but then the question is how it can be healed. The most important part of healing is the role of prebiotics and restriction of food. Food supplements and restriction of food plays an important role in the healing of the gut. That is why again and again it is said when you are suffering from depression, you are suffering from certain disease, certain food is restricted, so that the body itself can heal the system. So for NIBS it has its own role, about which we will discuss in the NIBS chapter, that how it helps you in gut brain axis, how it helps you in depression, how acupuncture plays a role in depression in a modern scientific way. Because for whatever patient we get from the ICU, they have resolved to very high antibiotics. So in these cases, we find that the liver profile is okay. The first thing we go is liver profile, FTK, LFT and all. They are okay. They are within limits, permissible limits. Even if you go for ultrasound, there is no hepatomegaly, there is no liver problem. But the sugar is uncontrolled. Patients are having high wasting of muscles. Even in a frail body, you will find high wasting of muscles. So, how to revive this type of cases? It becomes a big challenge. And then they suffer from many type of diseases. Not one. They will go into chronic lung disease, intestinal lung disease. They may even go even to cancerous disease. How? We have understood neuroinflammation is created by gut, by a microglial. So Gluten is how gluten destroys the gut, how artificial destroys the gut. It's the same mechanism in which you can understand how inflammatory bowel syndrome, how depression, how fatigue, how different things were created in our body.
Okay, thank you. My next question.
Yes, please.
Is gout a precursor to heart disease, and how can NIBAS
See, I did
help?
not work with heart diseases. Heart
Mm,
is not my subject. I worked with neurodegenerative diseases and autoimmune disease.
okay, thank
Heart
you.
disease, we just refer it to the cardiologist. In India, if something goes wrong with a cardiac patient, is a high risky subject. We don't like to take it
Okay, thank you.
because the patient comes to us in almost when the heart is 80% block or 70% block, and at that time we only know one solution: go with stenting or go with bypass surgery. So nowadays people go with stenting. It's a right solution for the disease. So we don't go much interfere with cardiac disease because cardiac problems are too many and patients do not come to me for that. Patients generally, I am famous in this part of the state or in India for my neurodegenerative diseases. I am not a expert of diabetes or something. I just explained that how I recovered my diabetes and diabetes of few more patients inserting certain needles and restricting their diet. And I found which human mixed diet which we used to give. Even in my mother's case, even during her death, her liver factors were damaged because of high antibiotic. Gut factors were damaged. Her CRP was elevated, but her sugar was below level, and we did not even give her insulin. We withdrawn insulin 20 days before her death. Otherwise, she was on high insulin diet. So the moment we start controlling her diet, we found that she revived. But then the question was that she gave up food. The giving up of food was one of the reasons that her gut was damaged. Now, since the gut was damaged, she was unable to digest anything. As a result, what happened? She got elevated CRP level. When her elevated CRP was high, we realized after giving antibiotics, suddenly again it raised higher, and then it get neuroinflammation, and she suffered from brain meningitis. Thereafter, she went into coma, and then she died. From there, I realized the importance of gut-brain axis.
Thank you for the explanation.
More questions? Any more questions?
Sir, more insulin in the blood, how much which is injurious to the health?
See, that is not that is not my subject. I did not study much about diabetes. I told you I have expertise myself in neuroinflammation.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sorry.
Sir, paleo diet is a primitive style diet.
See, much I do not know about paleo diet. I did not study about it. But then it has been said that it was a solution to gut infection. Because this was explained to me by Rashmi. I did not find time much to study about paleo diet. But the founder was. Uh, Now you'll find a lot of books on paleo diet. But please read the book which is written by the founder. Because these are the original books. We read the original and we create something from them. It's not, we will not find the source information. The source information is always given by the author who has done his original research. Now, cystostomy has been done by I.P. Cherian. So, he'll give you a correct idea of what is cystostomy. But if you go to other neurosurgeons, they may explain you what is sternostomy. But how sternostomy was developed, they will never give you that idea, which will put lot of questions in your mind. Sternostomy is like a subject with neurosurgery was developed with the concept of cleaning and cooling of the brain. So if you do herniation of the brain by cutting down this cranial bone, if the bone is cut down, this herniation of the brain, it leads to what? Malfunctioning of neurodegenerative diseases. Why? Because of deposition of protein and non-functioning of G lymphatic system, CSF fluid. So who created the edema? Edema was created by the CSF. Where is CSF stored? In the supracellular system. Now, can we enter in a TBI when the brain is very swelled up, edema is in the brain? Can we enter the supracellular system?
No, sir, we can't.
That was the study done by I.P. Chiari. He found out the way how to enter the supracellular system and open it at atmospheric pressure, and then he studied the cooling and cleaning of the brain. So gut-brain axis and cooling and cleaning of the brain plays two major roles in what? Neuroinflammation of the diseases, especially Alzheimer's and other diseases. There where we find that acupuncture and the tongue acupuncture plays an important role in neuroinflammation. Earlier my faith was not much in acupuncture, but then when I met Dr. Udipong, when I saw his work, and when we sat together, and then there was another gastrointestinal surgeon from US who came to meet me. There jointly we discussed and we found that yes, neuroinflammation is created because of two issues. One is gut-brain axis, one is G lymphatic system.
Dr. Sastri, I'd like to ask my next question. Yeah. So, pertaining, how can you explain more of the correlation of those who contracted COVID? How does this affect the cognitive performance of our brain and also
Whenever
our
there
gut
is,
brain as well?
see, it is a very simple system. Let us not make it very complicated. COVID did not affect it, but much affected it. COVID was generally a lung disease. But the antibiotics which was given in COVID, viral doses and all, they created the leaky gut. Leaky gut, we saw the microbes which was generated destroyed the glial cells. Glial cells are those cells which protects the neurons of the brain. So when these astrocytes and dendrites are damaged, then there is a leakage in the blood-brain barrier. Whenever there is a leakage in the blood-brain barrier, all these foreign bodies enters the brain and neuroproteins are created. As a result, you will see lot of damages inside the post-COVID cases, especially in neuroinflammation.
And how can NIBS help in the recovery?
It all depends on what you are treating, how you are treating and how you are treating and what you are treating. NIBS is one part of the system, it's not the entire system. So far we are able to understand the NIBS role in certain diseases and especially neuromuscular disorders. We have not been able to rule out like in Parkinson and all, we have been able to support it. But totally if you depend on only NIBS or a particular system, I think it will be a heavy load on this particular subject. After all, it is a system which has to be corrected. NIBS supports the recovery, but in entirety it's not a totality in itself. Otherwise, why I need to teach TOM? Why I need to teach the various combination of TCM points? Why I need to teach all these other subjects? It was not necessary. Everything could be done by NIBS. Why we need to put a medicine doctor Why we need to study a patient 4 times a day? Why we need to regain the reinnervation of the nerve? Today we have revived a patient who came after double stroke, quadriplegic double stroke patient, and today she is able to walk. Why? She was not able to walk in her stay with 2 hospitals in ICU. Why she was able to walk here within 20 days? Why this person was not able to walk for 17 years in his life? He suffered from 2004 with what? Gunshot injury. Now it is what? 2021. How many years? 17 years. So their recovery makes us think, what is the role of NIBS? What is the restricted role of NIBS? Both we must know. NIBS produces neuromodulation, that we know. It helps in what? Improving the muscle tone, muscle wasting, paralysis, Parkinson, and other neurodegenerative diseases, as well as also it's supposed to neuroinflammation. But so far, gut-brain axis is there. We can understand that G-lymph, it helps to produce certain neurotransmitters which mixes with aquaporin 4 water molecule, and it enters the brain. It cleans the clean and cooling of the brain. It helps in cleaning and cooling of the brain. The 2 roles of NIBS can be established. Further role has to be researched out, and more important, we have told again and again which kind of bacteria has been generated. The recovery of the bacteria has to be done by a conservative approach. What kind of approach we take, that is important. Second, the restriction of diet is important too for the revival of the patient. The main question was whether gluten really helps create this disease. So this video was put up. Every time this question was put up to my seminar also, that how gluten plays it, what gluten does. I said, if it is my own opinion, people said I am creating one hypothesis. Then I said, okay, what the world is saying, you hear their opinion also, go for second opinion. So we took this video to explain the second opinion, what the other professor thinks about gut-brain axis, and how other diseases like chronic fatigue syndrome and all these are created in the body. Because you were saying the root cause, all the questions. When you study further, then you understand what is the cause and what is the root cause of the disease.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for explanation.
More questions, please. It is a very interesting subject, only when you want to go with the recovery of the patient. It really speaks a close relationship between our Ayurveda, the terms of TCM, the terms of close relationship with TCM and other diseases. Any more questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dr.
Thank you, Winnie.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
sir.